Today we are going to be checking out 5 Gibson SGs at 5 different price points. Let's get into it. A while back, we shot a few videos checking out Les Pauls, Strats, Tellys at 5 different price points and talking about kind of who each of these guitars is for. And so we wanted to bring that back today and check out SGs. SGs are some of my favorite Gibson guitars. I have a lot of nostalgia for them, as my first good guitar was a Gibson SG Special Faded that I saved up a long time for. Love Gibson SGs. I still play a bunch of SGs to this day. This episode was a lot of fun to shoot. I've chose 5 different used SGs that we have in our inventory currently. These are all guitars that you can find on the used market, and they all kind of hit a different price point and have a different feature set. We're gonna go through, we're gonna see how all of them sound and kind of see who each of these is for. The first one we're gonna look at is this 2011 Gibson SG Melody Maker. This is extremely stripped back and barely qualifies as an SG, as it doesn't even have the full-size Gibson headstock. Just one humbucker pickup. This is a 491T ceramic humbucker. Just one volume knob, no tone. The jack is right there. It literally does not get any simpler than this. Very bare bones, kind of in junior territory, but even more stripped back than a junior. Price point, you'll find these anywhere from like $700 to $1,000 on the used market. Stepping up into a more proper SG, the next one we're gonna check out is the Gibson SG Tribute. This example is from 2019, and these are very similar to the SG Faded Specials that they used to make, which, like I just mentioned, was the first nice guitar I ever had. This is pretty similar to the one that I had, a few different specs, but overall still a very cool guitar. This is loaded with Gibson 490T and 490R pickups, which are now Alnico wound. We're getting out of the ceramics for this, and every other guitar we're gonna look at is going to have Alnico wound pickups. Price-wise, you'll see these go for just a little bit more than the Melody Maker for the most part. They'll usually sit right around $1,000 for a used one. This one's actually not in the best shape. It's got some wear there from when somebody used to have some sort of sticker or emblem or something right there. Overall, these would be just a little bit more than your Melody Maker. It is funny to note the Melody Makers are made in a lot lower quantities than this, so they are a little bit rare. Those do get a little bit of a collectability bump price point wise, whereas these are very, very common, so probably a little bit easier to come across a deal on these. We are stepping up once again now into kind of the core of the SG line. This is a Gibson SG Standard from 2007. This is kind of the flagship standard SG. These come loaded with a 498T in the bridge position and 490R in the neck position. So same neck pickup as the last guitar, but different bridge pickup. This features a gloss lacquer finish. You get the cool mother of pearl inlay on the headstock there. When you think of SG, this is probably the one. This is just your SG Standard. This is the one you kind of compare everything else against. Price point wise, you'll see these on the used market anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600. Stepping up once more, we have the 61 Reissue SG. This example is from 1999. This features 57 classic PAF style humbuckers, and this is a lot more of a vintage accurate guitar. Obviously reissuing a 61, it has a very slim neck. It's a little bit wide, but very cool if you are into a vintage style SG. Once again, gloss lacquer finish, mother of pearl inlays, and all the other cool accoutrements you would hope for on a SG of this echelon. This is an older example, so the price point can be a little all over the place depending on the year, but if you're looking at a late 90s example of this, it's probably gonna be around $2,000 in nice condition. And the last guitar we're going to check out, this is kind of the top of the heap. This is a 2024 Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul 63 reissue, which of course is a SG body shape. This comes outfit with literally everything. You get the vibrola, triple pickups, very, very cool custom inlay. I mean, this is a top shelf SG in every single way. This is reissuing a 63, so this is right before they started calling this the SG. This was actually still called a Les Paul at the time. This is a very top-notch SG. On the used market, you'll see this anywhere from $4,500 to $5,500, so a pretty big jump in price from the last ones we looked at. Quick reminder, we'd really appreciate if you would consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on the video. All that stuff helps us out a bunch, and we really appreciate it. Let's get into some demos to compare these guitars. I will note we are only going to be comparing the bridge pickup on all of these. We're not going to be checking out the vibrola or any other pickups, as we want to be able to compare the same thing across all the guitars. And given that the Melody Maker only has a bridge pickup, that's what we got to go off of, so let's get into it. now it's time to talk about these and kind of talk about who each of these is for. So the first guitar we checked out was this Melody Maker. This is by far the most stripped back of all the SGs and the most economical. I'm someone who likes juniors a lot, so this is very up my alley, so I do love it for that. But to be completely honest, when comparing with the other guitars that we checked out today, I didn't love how this one sounded. It was kind of like a little bit pokey and wasn't the most clear of all the pickups, especially with like higher gain distortion. And we are running through a pretty high gain rig today, so that kind of really shows you where the pickups are at. If a pickup sounds really clear with all of that gain, then that's a good pickup. Yeah, this one didn't hold up as well. I think it's just because it's a ceramic, more kind of cost-effective pickup. Very cool guitar. I don't think this is the best value for money on the list, as for around the same price you can get in the next guitar. But if you like juniors, if you're looking for an SG Junior, but you want a humbucker, not a P90, I would definitely check these out, especially if you kind of like the aesthetic of what this is. I normally don't say this with guitars, but I would maybe consider changing the pickup to something else. Since it's just the one pickup, this would be a very easy swap to something maybe a little better, or maybe you like this the way it is, and that's totally cool too. Moving into the SG Tribute, this definitely feels like a more proper SG than the Melody Maker, which that's good and bad. I mean, the Melody Maker definitely has the most unique vibe of all of these, so that cannot be underplayed. But this kind of feels a little more in line with what I would expect for an SG. You still do get the natural like satin finish here as you do with the Melody Maker, so it doesn't feel like a standard or anything. I was really surprised how much better this guitar sounded than the last one. And not to mention, obviously, the added features of having both pickups, all 4 knobs, full-size headstock, and kind of everything else you would expect for an SG. This definitely feels like a welcome upgrade, and if you are wanting a proper SG and not a junior, this is definitely a good jump from the last one. Value-wise, I think this is one of the stronger values here, as it is all the guitar, and they're not crazy expensive or crazy hard to find. So if you're someone who prefers kind of the more satin finish, you don't care about the gloss lacquer, you don't care about vintage cracked, you're not into kind of all the cool stuff that comes with the next 3 that we're gonna look at, I think this is a very valid choice. I think if you are looking for a more vintage style SG and you do like what the others have to offer, this is not that. It is still very much a budget-friendly option, but these can be absolute workhorse guitars. This could be a great gigging guitar. This is still a great sounding guitar, so it could be a cool studio workhorse as well. It's still pretty stripped back. If you like what this is, definitely worth checking out. Getting into the Standard, the flagship SG, this definitely feels like a very welcome upgrade from the last 2. And I will say, when we were shooting the demos for this, as soon as we swapped over to this one, I was like, oh yeah, this is a proper SG. This is what I would expect. This is what I would be personally looking for. I like the gloss lacquer finish more than the satin finish. I think this one sounds a little bit better. It sounds a little more balanced. This does have covers, which is going to affect the sound a little bit as well. Just as soon as I started playing it, both from feel, what we were hearing out of the amp, kind of how I reacted with the amp, just everything felt more balanced with this guitar. It felt very at home. This example is certainly quite worn in, so that maybe helps it feel a little worn in while still feeling nice with the gloss finish. I know some people don't like the gloss finish, so if you're one of those people, the Tribute might actually be a better option in some ways, but if you want this style SG, the Standard is the benchmark for a good reason, and I really, really like this guitar. I think it is a very good value for the money, and it will last you a lifetime. If this is what you want out of an SG, I don't think you're gonna get this and want to upgrade to something else. The last 2, if this is kind of what you're working towards and you stop short at one of the other guitars, you still might want to push up eventually and get into this, but I think once you get to kind of this guitar or this territory, this is a good place to be. Moving on to the 61 Reissue SG, I'll just say I like this even more than the last. If you are looking for a more vintage style, vintage correct SG, this is a really cool one. I love the aesthetics of the 61, and these 57 classic PAFs sound fantastic. These are probably the most clear sounding pickups of the entire bunch, so I like that a lot. Definitely a little less hot, so you could definitely push your amp a little hotter with this guitar, which I personally really like to do. Once again, this one feels very at home. I would say the quality level feels relatively comparable between this and the last one. I just kind of enjoy this one a little more for what it is. It definitely has a slimmer neck profile, which I like, and just overall, I would say this is really, really great. I like this one a lot. Being that this one costs a bit more than the last one, and it does have a little bit of that kind of collectible premium on it, I would say value-wise, the Standard probably beats this just a little bit, but if this is what you want, this is a good place to look. And I don't think that the price is unreasonable for what it is. On to our last guitar, the Custom Shop. This is the most guitar out of all of them by far, I would say. It is the heaviest, obviously has the most features. You get 3 pickups, you get the vibrola, so if this is what you want, none of the other guitars are going to accomplish this. If you're not somebody who's looking for all of this, if you just want a more straight up SG, I don't think you need to go all the way here. This is excessive, and that's kind of of what's cool about it. So I absolutely love this for what it is. I would love playing this guitar. I will say back to back, I always forget when you pick up a 3 pickup guitar, how much different the feel is, especially on an SG, your pick is like right there. So you're gonna be running into that middle pickup. Speaking on anything custom shop, it's tough to call like a good value, as they're not meant to be value guitars. They're meant to just be exceptional instruments and kind of exemplify everything that's great about the model that they are creating there. I think this does that very well. This is very flashy. This is not a subtle guitar, but if this is what you want, and I do really enjoy this for what it is, I would not hesitate to check these out. As far as custom shop instruments go, this is not like a crazy expensive one. So this is still definitely an attainable guitar. It's expensive, but it is attainable compared to, you know, the 5-figure plus custom shops that we see made all the time today. It's a lot of guitar. Now that we're at the end of the video, let's talk about it. Which one was my favorite? And you probably already have a hint of which one that is. So all things considered, this was definitely my favorite of all of the SGs. Quality-wise, this is right there with the custom shop. The fit and finish on this is incredible. I love how this is spec'd out. The neck is extremely comfortable and these pickups sound awesome. For me, I don't think there's any more like SG you can get than this. So I love this for what it is, and this is a really cool guitar. I also do want to give a quick shout out to this one, just your benchmark SG Standard. I would say value-wise, this is probably the best one in the entire batch. I would say this is at a very attainable price point, and I kind of been saying this for the last 3, but this is just as much SG as the other. I just kind of like the specs and the feel of that one a little better, but quality-wise, this is just as good of an SG. This is a good spot to land on. I think it just comes down to, do you want something that's more vintage correct or not? If this is what you want, then the Standard is also a really, really great option. Well, guitars 3 and 4 were my favorites. It's funny, the 2 outliers probably stood out the most, as far as like the Melody Maker is so stripped back that it feels like it's doing its own thing, and then the custom has so much going on that it also feels like it's doing its own thing. In some ways, it really does come down to those middle 3 and where do you want to land. I think that's just personal preference. I think they're all great guitars, all 5, but really specifically the middle 3. I don't think you can go wrong. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. We really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun going through all these guitars. Who doesn't love playing a bunch of SGs? Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite is, or if you have an SG, we would love to hear what you got. We always enjoy reading you guys' stories. If you like any of the SGs that you're seeing in this video, we'd love if you checked them out at flashfotogear.com. All of these are for sale as of posting this video. And as well as these, we have a bunch of other cool SGs and lots of other guitars as well. So if you want to check it out at flashfotogear.com, we'd really appreciate that. That is how we keep this thing going. As I said before in the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really does help us out. We'll see you in another video soon. Bye.